Who or what is God? What is the purpose of morality? Are all religions true, or is one of them superior? These are big questions that people have asked for a long time. In this essay, two famous philosophers and writers go head-to-head on issues like these. Ladies and gentlemen, present you John Hick and C.S. Lewis. John Hick is internationally known as an expert in religion and philosophy. He was born in England in 1922. When he grew older, he decided to pursue a law degree, but changed his mind when he converted to Christianity. He moved to the University of Edinburgh, where he would later receive his Doctor of Letters degree. In 1950, he earned a PhD in philosophy from Oxford University. An extensive teaching career at Cornell, Princeton, Cambridge, Birmingham, and Claremont followed. Over time, Hick began to move away from Christian doctrines as he developed his own views on religion and God. A widely acclaimed philosopher of religion, it is not surprising that Hick is the vice president of both the British Society for the Philosophy of Religion and the World Congress of Faiths. He has written over a dozen books and is a very influential modern philosopher. Clive Staples Lewis was an extremely influential Christian writer of the 20th century. He was born in Ireland in 1898 and later fought for England in World War I. In 1925, he was appointed to a teaching position at Oxford University, where he worked for 29 years. During this time, Lewis converted from atheism to Christianity and wrote over 30 books. One of these books, Mere Christianity, is a classic that provides insight into some of his philosophies. An internationally acclaimed Christian author, Lewis died in 1963. Now I will discuss the philosophies of these men. Although they are both products of Western culture and thinking, their views differ on some important points. The three topics of God, morality, and religion will be my focus. John Hick views God as a being who is so superior to our cognitive abilities that we cannot know what he is really like. He describes God as transcategorical. With this explanation, Hick echoes the ideas of Immanuel Kant and his beliefs that we think in different categories. From this premise, Hick reasons that we cannot categorize God. Another philosopher he refers to is Pseudo-Dionysius, a Christian mystic from about the 5th century. Dionysius wrote about how God is ineffable or indescribable. If God is indescribable, then God must not be like our conceptions of God. Hick takes Dionysius' thoughts to the next level and says that we cannot even apply any attributes to God. He explains that we cannot decide facts about who God is, that he is loving, omniscient, a trinity, or etc., just by experience, because our experiences of God are not who God really is. This view hints at the reductio ad absurdum argument, which is more commonly used in the East. It uses the concept of infinity, how God is infinitely above our categories of thinking, to reduce the idea of a knowable God to absurdity. This distance, Hick explains, is so that God does not overwhelm us. Hick believes that, in essence, God exists as the ultimate reality. The two levels of this reality are the transcategorical God and the God as we experience him. In this way, Hick supports the philosophy of religious pluralism. He says that the same ultimate God is perceived differently by different religions. Only our experiences of God are different. C.S. Lewis supports the Christian view of God. He explains that God is outside of space and time, just as an author is outside of his book, or an architect is not the same as his building. So far, Hick would agree. But Lewis, in contrast to Hick, believes that God has revealed himself to humans. He says that God reveals himself through our consciences, through stories of him, through his relations to the Jews in the Old Testament, and finally through Jesus. God is the standard of pure goodness by which our conscience defines good and evil. The fact that we know that something is wrong with the world, like injustice, proves that we have an idea of what a right world is. Therefore, Lewis would argue, our consciences prove the existence of God. This is one of Aquinas' 5 proofs for God. He said, if some things are better than other things, there must be something, for example God, that is the best thing to which we are comparing everything. Lewis also notes that there are stories and folk tales in various non-Christian religions and cultures that bear a strange resemblance to the God of Christianity. God specifically revealed himself through the Jews, as Lewis said, hammering into their heads the sort of God he was. According to the ancient book of Exodus, God describes himself to the Jews as the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth. Finally, Lewis believes that God revealed himself by coming to earth in the form of Jesus Christ. So although Hick and Lewis are both theists, they differ in their opinions of whether humans can know God. They both believe that God is the ultimate reality. Hick sees a God who is so beyond us that he is unknowable. Lewis sees a God who, although he is infinitely beyond our world, has an interest in his creation and therefore reveals himself to us. John Hick is known for his explanations of Irenaean theodicy, which reconciles the concepts of a loving God and an evil world. He rejects the free will doctrine held by Lewis and others because he claims that this view is contrary to what we observe in the world today. The idea that man was created perfect and then declined into evil actions is the opposite of what scientists claim happened by the evolutionary model. Hick also notes that the Earth's problems are not all the result of bad choices, because things like natural disasters do not depend on these choices. Hick's theodicy is that the evil in the world is helping us to become better creatures. He claims that selfishness is the big problem with humanity, and he believes that morality is an evolutionary process. As humans mature, he says we'll evolve to greater levels of morality and spirituality. Furthermore, he explains that the evil in our environment is actually helping our evolution. He reasons that a sense of morality and responsibility could not exist if there were no consequences for our actions. Therefore, something that is struggled for is more valuable than something that is given for free. As Hick writes, a moral goodness that exists as the agent's initial given nature, without ever having been chosen by him in the face of temptations to the contrary, is intrinsically less valuable than a moral goodness which has been built up through the agent's own responsible choices through time in the face of alternative possibilities. These struggles must be in place to enable us to evolve into more godlike creatures. The basic principle of the Golden Rule, do to others as you would have them do to you, is a universally accepted doctrine in all of the major religions. Hick, like Lewis, admits that there is a universal ethic, or a global notion of what is right and wrong, but he says that this is only a basic ethical standard. In an article about whether or not Christianity is the only true religion, he writes, there is in fact a basic moral outlook which is universal. He suggests that this rule of morality came about due to an outburst of religious insights in the era from about 800 to 200 BC. Confucius, Buddha, the Hebrew prophets, Socrates, and many other religious thinkers lived in this time period. But he also notes that none of these thinkers or their religions has a true grasp on what is right and wrong, because specific morals vary across cultures. C.S. Lewis defines moral rules as directions for running the human machine. He begins his famous book, Mere Christianity, by explaining the law of human nature, or the concept of an inherent universal morality. This law of human nature is the basis for Lewis's argument for God, that our concepts of right and wrong point to a defining standard of morality. This is also Aquinas' view, as mentioned earlier. Lewis states that we all have an idea about what behaviors are right and what behaviors are wrong, and that although the specifics may vary across cultures, the basic principles, such as not being selfish, remain universal. Hick and Lewis agree on this point. Lewis goes on to explain that this universal concept of morality